Mary Tyler Moore was in the middle of a bitter divorce when her phone rang late one night. It was her estranged husband, but he wasn't calling about their split. He told her to sit down and said 4 words that made her blood run ice cold. Mary Tyler Moore defined a new type of American woman with her characters in series like The Dick Van Dyke Show and The Mary Tyler Moore Show. Sadly, her personal life was full of off-screen drama. From her rocky relationships to her personal tragedies and a dark secret that nearly took her to the grave, Mary Tyler Moore's real story was far more haunting than any role she ever played. Mary Tyler Moore was born in December 1936 in Brooklyn, New York. From an early age, she had her sights set on the spotlight, a place she knew she belonged. "I knew at a very early age what I wanted to do," she recalled in an interview. By her own admission, she was always kind of desperate for attention. "I call it just showing off," which was what I did from about 3 years of age on. Moore's uncle saw her potential and convinced her family to move to Los Angeles. Moore completed high school in the City of Angels and wasted no time beginning to make her way into show business and the tabloids. Moore's first tiny role was in fact a big deal. She made her silver screen debut as the tiny dancing elf Happy Hot Point. Her character appeared in TV commercials during the 1950s show The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet. It obviously wasn't a starring role, but it was a lucrative one that gave Moore an insatiable appetite for whatever role came next. Unlike the thousands of other Hollywood hopefuls, Moore found success right out of the gate, or so she thought. For just 5 days of work as Happy Hot Point, Moore pocketed $6,000. That's more than $73,000 in today's money. However, what happened next proved the old saying true: easy come, easy go. A high-paying gig wasn't the only thing that Moore landed right out of high school. At just 18 years old, she got herself another coveted prize, a husband. The first of 3 to be exact. Unfortunately, trying to balance a marriage and a career proved to be harder than she had expected. Right out of high school, Moore married the boy next door. Literally, she married her 28-year-old neighbor, Richard Meeker. Meeker was not an actor. In fact, he was a cranberry juice salesman. By all accounts, they had a happy marriage at first. Just 6 weeks after tying the knot to Meeker, Moore found herself pregnant. As her baby bump grew, she found it increasingly difficult to slip into her sleek costume and hide her pregnancy. Ultimately, Hot Point made the decision for Moore and fired her from her lucrative gig. At least she had a family to go home to, right? Moore had to give up the opportunity of a lifetime to have her first and only child, Richard Carlton Meeker Jr., or Richie, as she liked to call him. Unfortunately, a beautiful baby boy wasn't enough to save her marriage. In 1962, Moore split from Meeker Sr. After giving birth, Moore tried to rekindle her career. She posed anonymously for album covers and even auditioned for The Danny Thomas Show. According to Thomas, however, she missed it by a nose. No daughter of mine could ever have a nose that small, but Moore clearly left a big impression on Danny Thomas, tiny nose or not. Between 1957 and 1959, Moore managed to land a string of uncredited roles. Ironically, the role that gave her a leg up in the industry featured, well, nothing but her legs. She appeared as a glamorous receptionist in Richard Diamond, Private Detective. She never actually showed her face in the role, but it was enough to restart her career. Television legend Danny Thomas had passed on Moore for his own show, but that didn't mean that he didn't see Moore's potential. Based solely on Thomas's recommendation, Moore received the opportunity that would cast her in the spotlight she had always wanted. He recommended her for the role of Laura in a Carl Reiner-produced show. Moore would make television history as Laura in Reiner's cultural phenomenon, The Dick Van Dyke Show. But while 60 other actresses tried to claw over each other for the opportunity, Moore was lukewarm to the role. She only agreed to go to the audition when her agent practically forced her to. Moore quickly fell in love with the character, and then she simply had to have the role. There was just one problem. She was too young. So Moore did something actresses never do. She lied to the show's producers about her age and said that she was actually older than she was. It was a gutsy move, but one that actually paid off in the long run. Once the producers found out that she had lied, they laughed it off and turned it into the premise of an episode for the show. But while the producers laughed it off, her co-stars were not at all impressed. Moore's main co-star, Dick Van Dyke, was less than impressed. He thought that Moore was too young to play his wife in the series. While he wasn't necessarily ready to walk off the set over the deception, Mary Tyler Moore knew that she had her work cut out for her if she was to win her co-star over. After filming a couple of episodes, even Dick Van Dyke had to admit that Moore clearly had that it factor. In fact, Moore so impressed the Dick Van Dyke Show creator Carl Reiner with her unexpected comedic talents that he wanted to feature her more prominently. Her spotlight-stealing talents, however, didn't make all of her co-stars happy. Reiner had originally planned to feature another female character on the Dick Van Dyke Show more prominently. He had intended Rosemarie's character Sally Rogers to be the female lead, but Moore, with her 1,000-watt smile and unexpected comedic chops, stole the show. However, Marie was not so keen to share the spotlight. Moore always did her best to get along with her co-stars, but she couldn't help it if they were jealous of her spotlight-worthy talents. While Moore and Rosemarie never came to blows on set of the Dick Van Dyke Show, they maintained a frosty working relationship. In all fairness to Moore, she was hiding a dark secret. Moore's real-life divorce from Richard Meeker had consequences for her on-screen character in the Dick Van Dyke Show, Laura. After Moore finalized her divorce from Meeker, the show's writers changed her character's surname from Meeker to Meehan. It wouldn't be the last time that the lines between Moore's on-screen and off-screen lives blurred. Without ever really intending to, Moore became a trendsetter and a role model for young American women. Her character appeared on the Dick Van Dyke Show in capri pants instead of a dress, as all other housewives in television. The capri pants controversy sparked some behind-the-scenes tension between Mary Tyler Moore, the show's producers, and its sponsors. While Moore appreciated the look and felt it reflected the style of a modern housewife, the sponsors were hesitant. They worried that the outfit might come across as too bold or unconventional for television standards. Moore had more than her fair share of Hollywood romances, but there was one man who, despite his best efforts, just couldn't stop thinking about her in those capri pants. According to Moore, she was the only leading lady to play opposite the legendary and swoon-worthy Elvis Presley that didn't succumb to his charms. They starred together in 1969's Change of Habit. Even after his original misgivings about Moore, Dick Van Dyke came to like the actress. Maybe even more than audiences knew. Moore and Van Dyke played a married couple so convincingly on screen that audiences thought they were actually married in real life. Shockingly, the audience wasn't totally wrong. One of the reasons for Moore's divorce from Meeker might have been that she was harboring feelings for another man. Moore confessed that she did at first have a crush on Dick Van Dyke, but they became close in another way. Van Dyke likened their relationship to that of siblings, but Moore did find love through the Dick Van Dyke Show. Moore met her eventual second husband, Grant Tinker, while working on the Dick Van Dyke Show. Much like Moore, he had only recently gotten out of a less than spectacular marriage. Unlike Moore, however, he was ready to get hitched again right away. Moore barely had time to mend her broken heart after her marriage to Meeker ended. The very same day that the tabloids published the news of her failed marriage, Tinker came knocking. He asked Moore out for dinner before the ink on the newspaper was even dry. It was all too soon for Moore, and she turned him down at first. Still recovering from her failed marriage to Meeker, Moore turned down Tinker's offer of a dinner date. But according to Moore, Tinker was very persistent. He simply wouldn't take no for an answer. After she turned him down, he told her, "A friend of mine just gave me his house in Palm Springs. Would you like to go there for the weekend?" Shocked, but flattered, Moore shot back, "No, you don't get it, do you?" Actually, he understood the assignment. He understood it very well. Moore had no idea just how persistent Tinker really was, or how devious. Just 1 month after their first meeting, Tinker secretly arranged for Moore to go to New York, where he was working. He said he wanted Moore in the Big Apple to promote the Dick Van Dyke Show, but he actually had other plans. His plan was to sweep her off her feet. Years later, Moore recalled the feeling that Tinker gave her on that trip to New York. She gushed that their love felt very, very special. But was it special enough to last? Moore and Tinker officially tied the knot in 1962, just as the Dick Van Dyke Show began taking off. While they might have met thanks to the Dick Van Dyke Show, their marriage outlasted the series by years. In fact, Moore's marriage to Tinker proved to be good, not just for her heart, but for her insatiable need for attention. After the success of the Dick Van Dyke Show, Moore joined forces with her husband, Grant Tinker, to create the Mary Tyler Moore Show. It became everything she had hoped for, earning her a string of record-breaking Emmy Awards. Ironically, Moore's marriage to Tinker set off records of its own, but not the kind that Moore could be proud of. Moore and Tinker had a wonderful marriage when they weren't at each other's throats. For reasons that we may never know, Moore and Tinker's seemingly happy marriage went from hot to cold faster than a tap. Their on-again, off-again marriage was decidedly off again in 1973 when they went their separate ways. Sadly, another failed marriage would soon be the least of her problems. 1980 turned out to be the worst year in Moore's life. Not only had she and Tinker finally decided to end their topsy-turvy marriage, this time for good, but she suffered another terrible tragedy. With divorce papers still in the works, Moore was about to receive the worst news of her life, probably from the last person she wanted to hear it from. Moore's now ex-husband, Tinker, called her at 5 a.m. on October 15, 1980. When she picked up the phone, Moore couldn't have imagined what Tinker was about to tell her. 4 haunting words followed. "It's Richie. He's dead." And that's how she learned her beloved son, Richie, passed away in a tragic and accidental shooting while handling a firearm. The loss was devastating for Moore. In the wake of Richie's passing, she found herself reflecting deeply on her life and the choices she had made, especially the times when her career had taken precedence over her family. As she scattered his ashes in California's Owens River, she expressed a profound sense of regret, saying, "There is no question about it. By the time Richie was 5, I had already let him down." Moore had just completed filming 1980's Ordinary People when her son passed away, in a twist more cruel than anything a Hollywood director could have dreamed of. In the film, Moore portrayed a woman grieving the loss of her son. Her only consolation for the deeply hurtful coincidence was an Oscar nomination for Best Actress. Prior to losing her son, Moore had gone to extreme lengths to relate to her character in Ordinary People. Her co-star, Timothy Hutton, described her as cold, snobbish, and uncommunicative towards him throughout filming. Her real-life response to losing her son so soon after her second divorce was, however, the exact opposite.
For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details.
Throughout the 1980s, Moore dated a string of suitors. Paparazzi regularly photographed her with funny man Steve Martin, but while she was cozying up to Martin in LA, it looks like she had another thing going in New York. While she was dating Martin and Warren Beatty and Michael Lindsay Hogg, the tabloids reported that Moore was also seeing someone else in New York, a much younger cardiologist. He was perhaps the only person qualified to perform a surgery on Moore's shattered heart. Moore met Robert Levine in 1982. He had been attending to Moore's ailing mother after they had returned from a trip to the Vatican. During the house call, however, it seems that Levine's real patient was not Moore's mother, but Moore herself. Moore and Levine quickly sparked up a romance, and this time, Moore would make sure that it would last forever. There was just one odd thing about these star-crossed lovers. Moore was nearly 20 years older than Levine. Nevertheless, that didn't stop them from tying the knot in November of 1983. In fact, Levine made Moore feel young again. Levine was good for Moore's heart, and not just because he was a cardiologist. After years of navigating the highs and lows of show business, Moore's physical and emotional health had taken a toll. She had privately been carrying a burden for many years, but Levine's support gave her the strength to face it head-on and begin a new chapter. Moore had been struggling with a substance use problem, something few outside her inner circle knew. Shortly after marrying Levine, she made the courageous decision to enter the Betty Ford Center, where she began her recovery journey. In addition to addressing her substance use, Moore also quit smoking, taking meaningful steps to improve her overall well-being. But years of stress, substance use, and personal loss had already impacted her health. Audiences knew Moore best for her comedic acting chops. She was definitely not an action film star. Nevertheless, she insisted on doing her own stunts in 2000's Mary and Rhoda. It did not end well. While chasing a dog on set, she tried to jump over a barrier. Instead, she tripped and fell, breaking her wrist. Moore was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes in the 1960s. The actress continued to manage the condition throughout her life. In 2011, she underwent surgery to remove a benign brain tumor, adding another hurdle to her ongoing health challenges. By 2014, her condition had worsened. Close friends and family shared that she was losing her vision and facing serious heart and kidney complications. On January 25, 2017, at the age of 80, Mary Tyler Moore passed away, leaving behind a legacy marked by resilience, trailblazing work, and a quiet strength in the face of adversity. If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.